Today, we are diving into one of the weirdest and, frankly, most terrifying stories from the ancient world. It's all about the bizarre road trip of a sacred object, the Ark of the Covenant, after it gets captured and taken deep into enemy territory. And trust me, this isn't just a war story. It's about what happens when you capture a prize that you absolutely cannot control.
It really forces you to ask this incredible question. I mean, what do you do when you capture an enemy's god? Imagine you're this victorious army. You've totally crushed your rivals, and you've seized their most holy relic. Now what? Well, the Philistines thought they had it all figured out, and oh boy, were they about to learn a lesson they'd never forget.
Okay, so let's set the scene here. For Israel, this was a day of just absolute soul-crushing defeat. They thought bringing the Ark of the Covenant, the actual symbol of their God's presence, into battle would guarantee a win. They were wrong. The high priest, a man named Eli, hears the news, falls off his chair, breaks his neck, and dies on the spot. His daughter-in-law goes into labor and names the baby Ichabod, which literally means the glory is gone. I mean, it doesn't get much darker than that. The Ark is officially in enemy hands. And so that kicks off the first part of our story, a god in a box. The Philistines have their ultimate war prize, and they're about to do exactly what you'd expect. They're going to parade it in front of their own god just to show everyone who's boss. So, first stop, the Philistine city of Ashdod. They haul the ark into the grand temple of their main god Dagon, and they stick it right there next to his big statue. For them, this is the ultimate flex. Israel's god is now just another captive trophy, bowing before the might of Dagon. The contest is over, right? Now, you might be asking, who exactly is this Dagon guy? Well, he wasn't some minor deity. For the Philistines, Dagon was the head honcho, a super powerful god of grain, weather, fertility, you name it. He was a big deal, kind of like the father of the even more famous god, Baal. In their world, he was top of the food chain. And that brings us to Section 2. The fall of Dagon, because what happens next, alone in that silent temple with no one watching, is a straight-up supernatural showdown. So let's look at the matchup. In this corner, you've got Yahweh, the invisible God of Israel, represented only by this fancy wooden box. And in the other corner, you have Dagon, represented by this giant, imposing statue in his own house. On paper, it looks like a total mismatch. The smackdown unfolds over 2 days. On day 1, the Philistine priests walk into the temple and find their god's statue has fallen on its face right in front of the ark, like it's bowing down. It's pretty weird, but they just kind of shrug, pick it up, and put it back in its place. But on day 2, day 2 is different. Dagon is face down again, but this time his head and both of his hands have been chopped off. Now, in the ancient world, that was not an accident. That was a clear, unmistakable sign that a warrior had been utterly and humiliatingly defeated. So, Yahweh beat Dagon in his own temple. But if the Philistines thought that was the end of it, they were so wrong. Things were about to get a whole lot worse for the people. Which brings us to our next section, the Ark's destructive tour. Because their little trophy, it just became a weapon of mass destruction. And this wasn't some quick weekend problem. The Ark stayed in Philistine territory for 7 months. 7! Think about that. For over half a year, this captured prize brought nothing but a relentless, escalating nightmare to the people who took it. The destruction followed the Ark like a shadow. First, in Ashdod, a horrible plague of painful tumors breaks out. A lot of scholars think this was actually the bubonic plague, especially since rats get mentioned later. So in a panic, they decide to ship the Ark off to the next city, Gath. Same thing happens, another deadly outbreak, mass panic. They're playing this terrifying game of hot potato with a divine object. Finally, they try to send it to the city of Ekron, and the people there literally see it coming and start screaming, they've brought the Ark here to kill us all. Nobody wants it. At this point, the Philistine rulers are in full-on crisis mode. This leads us to Section 4, the Philistines' desperate plan. They call in their own experts, their priests and diviners, to figure out how on earth they can get rid of this cursed box without making things even worse. And the plan they come up with is actually pretty ingenious. First, they make a guilt offering, little gold models of the tumors and rats that have been plaguing them. They put the Ark in the gold on a brand new cart that's never been used. Then they hitch it to 2 mother cows that are currently nursing calves and have never been yoked before. And here's the genius part. They lock the calves up, away from their mothers. Now, a nursing cow's only instinct is to get back to her baby. So the test is simple. If these cows ignore their screaming maternal instincts and walk straight toward Israel, then it's proof that this disaster came from Yahweh. But if they turn around to go back to their calves, then maybe it was all just a freak coincidence. So, what happened? Well, the result was unmistakable. Against every law of nature, the two cows set off in a straight line, directly for the border of Israel. They never wavered. And the text adds this chilling little detail. They were lowing all the way, basically crying for their babies the entire time, but were supernaturally compelled to keep walking. For the Philistine lords watching from a safe distance, the verdict was in. This was absolutely the hand of Israel's God. So the ark is finally sent back home, and you'd think the story's over, right? Happy ending? But it's not. The final and in some ways most tragic chapter is about to unfold. This brings us to a deadly homecoming, because even though the ark is back in friendly territory, the danger is far from over. The people in the Israelite town of Beth Shemesh are overjoyed to see the ark return. They celebrate, they offer sacrifices, they're ecstatic. But in all that excitement, they get careless, dangerously careless. They forget one very important thing. You have to respect this object. And the price for that carelessness is catastrophic. 70 men are struck dead on the spot. And why? Because they looked inside the ark. Out of pure curiosity, they treated this symbol of God's holy presence like an ordinary box they could just pop open and peek into. The same terrifying power that wrecked the Philistines had just turned on God's own people. And that raises a really tough question, doesn't it? I mean, why? Why punish your own people so brutally when they were just celebrating the ark's return? It seems unbelievably harsh, but the answer gets to the absolute core lesson of this entire crazy journey. See, this whole ordeal reveals a fundamental truth about divine power, at least from the ancient perspective. You can't control it. You can't weaponize it. You can't stick it in a box and own it. Yahweh proving his power over Dagon was just the warm-up act. The real lesson here is that holiness itself is a powerful and dangerous force. It's like a live wire, and it demands profound respect from absolutely everyone, friend and foe alike. And in the end, the surviving men of Beth Shemesh are just left completely shaken, asking this one haunting question: who can stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? And that question just hangs in the air. It's the big takeaway of the entire story, a reminder that some power can't be contained, can't be controlled, and cannot be treated casually. It demands awe, and it demands fear.